Hello, it's Sis Volk. Time to enjoy card making with me. For today's video, I will be using products from the Happy New Year bundle from AlINACRAFT. In it is this pack of lovely flower paper. It has such happy colors with different flowers and also papers in matching plain gradient colors. I also will be using these leaf stamps with beautiful detailed veins. There are so many different ways to use these stamps. Today I will be using them for a so-called ink resist technique. And I will be using this calendar. Not only for making calendars this stamp is useful, but also for marking a date on a card you can use it. There are 4 different shaker sequins in the set. I will be using them to make a shaker card. The pink and white are small butterflies. And the green and yellow are small lucky clovers. Let's start by picking papers to use. I took 4 pieces of paper for making 2 cards and matching envelopes. With each flower paper, I pick a paper with matching gradient color. On the flower paper I will be stamping, and the gradient paper I will be using as a background later. The ink resist technique I will be doing requires stamping, heat embossing and ink blending. I am using this nice big leaf because it is nice and big and has a lot of solid parts, which is best for the ink resist technique. With this I am going to stamp the whole sheet of paper. Before stamping, I treat the paper with talcum powder, which I put in a pantyhose for an easy apply. And it works great for making the paper grease-free. With Versamark ink I stamp some leaves on the paper. Versamark ink is transparent, so you can't see anything yet. But it is very sticky and therefore very suitable to use in combination with embossing powder. This is transparent embossing powder from AlINACRAFT, by the way. If you collect the powder on a piece of paper, you can easily put it back into the jar. You don't use much embossing powder and the jar lasts a very long time this way. The ink stays sticky for quite a long time, so I don't need to heat the powder immediately after stamping and powdering one leaf. Because the powder is now on the paper, you can easily see where to stamp the second leaf. I guess it is hard to see on camera, but in real life it is clearly visible. After stamping and powdering a few leaves, you heat emboss the powder. And then go on stamping and heat embossing the full panel. It works best with big stamps that have a big solid surface. Now maybe you think, why does this make sense to use transparent embossing powder? Just wait and see, you will be surprised. I love doing this technique. But never mind if you prefer to just stamp with black or any other color of ink instead, and don't do the heat embossing and ink blending. You can also make this card by just using this pretty paper as is. I like to do some ink blending, and for that I use colors that match the colors of the flower paper. I use oxide inks because they sit on top of the paper. And also will cover most parts of the paper that are not covered with embossing powder. But you can also use other inks for this technique. I start by blending the ink on top of the flower paper. I use candied apple to start with and apply it every here and there. There's no rhyme or reason to it, just have fun ink blending. I will ink blend on top of the paper everywhere. Don't mind going over the transparent embossing. The transparent embossing works as a resist. Where we stamped and heat embossed, the patterned paper will shine through. Next I add some mustard seed ink to it to fill up some gaps I purposely left and to blend the red with the yellow into a bit of orange. Now we remove the ink that is sitting on top of the embossed parts. For that I use a damp cloth. Now you see the patterned paper that is underneath shines through beautifully. and that is why I used only the most solid leaf from the set. You can do this technique with any paper and any stamp as long as it has solid parts in it. The stamped parts that are embossed resist the ink from getting into the paper. While the panel is drying, let's continue with the other paper. I'm so curious to see how this technique will look with all stamps, so I just give it a go. First I stamp one of the leaves on the pattern paper with Versamark. I apply clear embossing powder on top of that. Then I clean the stamp with a damp cloth. And I ink the same stamp up with green ink. This is Lucky Clover oxide ink that I am stamping on the plain gradient paper. I heat emboss the embossing powder and continue stamping the two panels with all the leaves that are in the set. I continue with every new leaf, stamping in Versamark first, clean it and then stamp it with the green ink after that. Stamping with oxide ink isn't perfect at all, but it looks very nice on this gradient paper. I think these stamps are fabulous. I love the details very much. So what we have now is a sheet of paper stamped with the green Distress Oxide ink, and this sheet of paper I stamped with Versamark ink and then heat embossed with transparent embossing powder from AlINACRAFT. You can see the shiny parts on the paper. Now I'm going to ink with the same green color Distress Oxide ink over this flowered panel. In doing so, I also use a lighter shade of oxide ink, and this is the Twisted Citron, which matches the other piece of paper and is a nice color to mix up the ink blending. Maybe it is a pity of the pretty pattern paper, because the ink blending will cover a big part of the paper. However, I also use a light green color that still shows part of the flowers underneath. But still the end result is stunning. For applying a thicker layer of oxide ink, I like to use a blending tool with a blending foam. AlINACRAFT now sells these tools in her shop in a pink color. They are also in the Happy New Year bundle. You can use them very well for applying different types of ink. The foam pads are interchangeable. For blending a thinner layer of ink, a blending brush is more convenient. AlINACRAFT also has lots of nice types of different blending brushes in her store. Just like I did with the red and yellow panel, I alternate the light green ink with the dark green color. Nice about this is that the flowers still shine through. It still looks very messy now, but once we wipe the embossing powder clean, the pattern comes out very nicely. I am not convinced to how the blended colors look at the moment. I need some more contrast and drama to it, so I decide to add some dark blue. The color Chipped Sapphire helps me to darken parts of the paper. Nice thing about oxide inks is that you can keep adding layers of colors on top of each other. I will have to clean the embossed parts though, to keep the flower pattern shine through. I think I might try this also with other colors, like pinks and purples, and another time with other types of ink. So now we have two papers that are sort of similar and a negative to each other to combine for making a card. But first we go back to the first panel I made and change that into a shaker card. I chopped this panel to fit the size of my card base, but 1 centimeter smaller, so it leaves a small border on the card when applied. To find the opening that I need for my shaker window, I stamp with VersaFine on top of the panel. I stamp on the place where I want the shaker opening to be. It is of no importance which ink you use as long as you can see where it is and notice not to smear the ink. We won't be using the stamp part, but I heated the ink so I would prevent smudges. Also like this, the panel is gorgeous, but I keep stepping it up a bit. Using a cutting blade, I cut out the leaf with a tiny border around it. I was not sure if I wanted to use the black leaf for any other project, so I cut it out in a way that I could spare it. If you are not sure cutting this way, just poke a hole in the middle of the leaf and then cut it out using scissors. I keep doubting the colors on the card panel. I decide to blend some more green over it. And I also want to make the edges a bit darker, so I blend those with red. And a few places in the middle of the paper I give some extra accent with green ink. When the edges are darker, it gives the panel a bit more dimension. Sometimes you only see this after cropping a panel. Now I ink the leaf with the light green oxide ink and decide where I want to stamp the leaf on a cropped piece of gradient paper. I hold the paper so that the light color is on top and the dark color on the bottom. By sliding the stamp off the desk, you can also apply extra pressure to the back side of the paper. Then I ink the stamp again, but this time with the darker color green ink. I only ink up the bottom of the leaf. I use a blending foam to spread the ink on the stamp and make the edge where there is no ink less harsh. I don't ink the tip of the leaf, so it will look lighter later on. With this I stamp again on the same spot on the leaf I stamped with the lighter green. A very light shift is not a problem, then you get the idea of a shadow. For a perfect impression, you can also use your stamp platform and stamp the leaf twice in a row, on the exact same spot with the two different colors of ink. But also shift it when you slide the paper a little bit in your stamping platform. With some white ink, or in my case white embellishment mousse from Nouveau, I add some splatters to the card panel. I think it needed some extra highlights. Making splatters using water and a water brush, you get somewhat larger drops onto the paper than when you apply splatters with a dry brush or smaller brush. For the shaker card, I use AlINACRAFT acetate sheets. They are A4 size and there are 10 of them in a pack. Every sheet has 2 protective films on each side, so it is scratch-free. You can also of course use any plastic you have from old waste material or old packages for your shaker cards. With double-sided tape, also from AlINACRAFT store, I tape around the edge of the opening. This is the place where we adhere the acetate piece on. You can glue acetate with regular glue, but this tape is more sturdy and you will be certain that the shaker won't fall apart when the recipient opens the envelope. The acetate looks blurry, but after removing the 2 films from the outer sides, the acetate becomes smooth and transparent. I will try to link all products that I use in the description below the video. The links are affiliate links, so I hope you will remember using them when buying anything on AliExpress or Amazon. For making shaker cards, AlINACRAFT sells perfect small 5mm wide 3D foam tape. On a roll is 5 meters of foam tape. I used some of it already for other shaker cards I made, or also for gluing sentiments raised. Remember to stick the tape close together and leave no openings. You don't want to have the shaker bits fall out when shaking the card. There are different ways to fill up a shaker card. Depending on the kind of card and whether there is a pattern on it or not, or also the kind of shaker elements you use, the way to build it up can be different. For me and for this card technique it is most useful to put the tape on the back of the panel and sprinkle some shaker elements on top of the insert card. Because the leaf is in the middle and the panel is centered on top of that, I cannot make a big mistake on gluing some of the tape on top of the shaker elements. As long as my shaker elements are in the middle, it will be okay. I could also have glued the double-sided foam tape on top of the insert card with the green leaf. Shaker elements could have been put inside that, But what I then mostly get is having the shaker bits get stuck to the tape when removing the backing of the tape. So the way I do it now is the safest way. Attach the tape firmly before shaking. Add some more double-sided foam tape on the outer edges of the panel and some glue or normal double-sided tape in the middle of the panel to glue the shaker panel to the base card. I will be using this happy birthday stamp set for this card. The happy birthday I use is underneath the logo of the AlINACRAFT package. These stamps have matching dies. You can choose whether to only stamp and cut the outlines or skip the stamping and die cut the text and outline both. I will be using the die to cut out the text I stamped earlier. A great advantage of such dies is that you can die cut multiple shapes, stack them together and make a sturdy raised sentiment. I used 4 layers of die cuts to raise this happy birthday stamp. But if you prefer, you could skip this or use just foam squares. Leftovers I used to put in the inside of the card. I like it very much how I transformed the flower paper into a totally different leaf paper with an interactive touch. The glossiness is stunning. I wish you could see it better. On the envelope I just glue a strip of the paper and stamp the leaf on top of it with the same oxide ink. I also do the 2-time stamping technique. Only for the envelope I stamp with the lighter ink on top of the darker ink. Some white and some black splatters to finish it off. The white splatters are made using Nouveau embellishment mousse and some water. The black splatters are black oxide ink mixed with water. For making the black splatters, I use a dry brush to get smaller splatters. Next, I will be making a calendar. In my latest video, I also used this awesome stamp. Take a look to see tips and tricks to use this stamp set. Using a stamp tool for the stamp platform makes life a lot easier in getting a good print. I decide to stamp the month in red. And I want to mark the date for the birthday. Using a cotton swab, I can make a perfect red round spot for the date I want to mark. Using a marker or pencil is also an option, of course, but I like it that the ink color is perfectly the same this way. March the 6th now is now nicely marked with a perfect red dot. I cut the calendar by hand, leaving a small white border. With a fine liner I draw a tiny shadow around the word March and half a circle around the red spot, also to give a shadow effect. Using leftover papers from the shaker panel, I assemble a new card. The strips I color at the edges with a black permanent marker by drawing a line on the side of the paper. When leaning on a white scrap piece of paper that you put underneath, you can easily color along the edge of the paper strip, making an even black line. Matching different papers, colors and sizes, for me that is a fun part of card making. I can take hours of not deciding how to assemble a card. For this one we need contrast. Therefore I decide to add black strips of paper to not only the card as well as the envelope. When a piece of paper is too short or you don't have enough pieces, just cut it in half and use both parts to the sides. We don't see what is underneath the calendar anyway. Here is a look at the finished card. I used all scraps I had left over and glued them in strips on a card base. I glued the calendar raised with double-sided foam squares, as well as the 2 sentiments I used. On all the paper strips I draw a black line with a permanent marker. See how much better this looks also on the envelope. I used a few white shaker butterflies to finish it off. And, by the way, I stamped the sentiment with Versamark ink on black paper and heat embossed it with the AlINACRAFT white embossing powder. Here is another look at the finished shaker card I made. What a surprising effect you get if you use the ink resist technique. The glossiness of this card is stunning. It also feels very smooth. And shaking it is a lot of fun. You could hardly say that the two cards are made with the same papers we created in the beginning. I don't want to bother you assembling the cards I made with the other papers I made. So I just show you the end result. With just 2 pieces of paper I managed to make 3 cards that are actually stunning and totally different from the pattern paper we started with. For each card I made I used both papers half on each card using the lightest piece on top. The top paper is the part I stamped with green ink on the gradient plain paper from the paper pack. The bottom paper is the part I stamped and heat embossed doing the ink resist technique on the flower patterned paper. On this card I glued a panel where there is a white border on all sides. I glued 2 black strips on both sides of the panel, leaving the bottom and top just as is. In the middle I glued a nice long sentiment to cover the paper seam. Here I also glued black paper strips on both sides of the panel. But I skipped the white border and have the paper stretched to the edges of the card at the top and bottom. Where here, with the first card, there's a white border at the top and bottom. The black text strip I glued raised with black foam tape. This way the foam is hardly visible and the text stands out nicely on the card. This last card is in landscape format. On this third card you see more of the beautiful pattern paper under the stamping, because the stamps were bigger and had more solid parts. In this first card the stamps are smaller and you miss more of what is underneath. In this landscape card I kept the upper edge white, while I made the bottom edge match the edge of the card. In between a black strip to join the 2 pieces of paper, and the black strip with white embossed text to finish it off. Also this text strip is glued on raised with black foam tape. These stamp sentiments are stamps with matching dies, by the way. As I said, all products I link for you in the description of this video. I hope you liked this ink resist technique and learned something new in card making. In the top right corner, if you click on the eye, I refer to other videos I made you might be interested in. You can also find them in the description below the video. If you are watching my video on AlINACRAFT's channel, you might not find all links or information you're looking for. Please check out my YouTube channel Sisvolk. Here you can find all my videos and playlists and also links to my other social media accounts, such as Pinterest, Instagram and Facebook. I am happy to share card making inspiration with you. I would like it though if you subscribe to my channel so I can keep up making more videos and share tips and tricks. Have you already clicked the thumbs up button? That helps the YouTube algorithm in showing my videos to others as well and get me higher in the playlist. If you log into YouTube, you are able to leave a message. That would make my day. And don't forget to search for my links and use any of them when shopping on AliExpress or Amazon. Also if you are searching for other products. Thank you so much for watching this video till the end. I wish you all a lovely day and enjoy card making. See you next time. Bye bye!